The teddy bear should not have been in her hand. It belonged on the zipper of Eliana Carter's purse, a small plastic thing with one cloudy eye and a blue shirt rubbed almost white. Instead, she had wrapped her fingers around it so tightly that its rounded ears pressed into her palm. Above it, a pink beaded bracelet spelled Mom, except the O was a faded yellow star. We were standing beside her silver SUV outside the sunny patio cafe, where the afternoon had smelled of espresso, warm brick, and salt carried in from the coast. 2 hours of easy conversation had just ended. Eliana had laughed at my opinion that restaurant chairs should never face an entrance unless the owner wanted nervous customers. She had told me I inspected menus like legal contracts. I had told her menus were legal contracts with better typography. For most of the date, nothing had felt fragile. She described redesigning a neglected school courtyard so every classroom could see green. I admitted that I checked exits before reading specials. When the waiter brought 1 spoon for 2 desserts, she ordered another instead of pretending intimacy was automatic. I respected that. Then her smile stopped. Her eyes had shifted from my face to the dark reflection in the SUV window. I did not turn. I moved half a step to my left, letting my navy jacket and shoulder block her view of the street while I followed the reflection instead. A gray sedan idled near the far corner. The driver's window was open 2 inches. Sunlight flashed across a full license plate as the car rolled forward. I memorized it. I did not reach for my phone until the sedan merged into traffic and disappeared. Eliana's thumbnail struck the bear's ear twice. "I have to go," she said. Her voice still sounded polite, but all the warmth had been pulled out of it. "It's 2:40, I said. "You told me your hard stop was 3. I remembered something. She tugged at the purse strap. The bear dropped back against the zipper and swung once. The date had been arranged by our mutual friend, Nora Lane, who had claimed that putting a landscape architect across from a security consultant was either inspired matchmaking or an efficient way to ruin one pleasant Saturday for 2 people at once. There had been no pity in the setup and no joke at Eliana's expense. Nora simply knew that Eliana redesigned public spaces so people could breathe in them, while I spent my days noticing every reason they might not. I kept my hands in my pockets. "Do you recognize the car?" Her gaze returned to mine too quickly. No. The answer arrived before the question had fully landed. I could have pressed. Instead, I stepped away from the driver's door so the path was clear. "Take the route you trust," I said, "and text Nora when you get home. You don't have to text me." Something shifted in her expression, not relief exactly, but surprise that I had offered an exit without standing in it. "Thank you for coffee, Elias. It was a good afternoon." It was. She opened the door, then paused with one hand on the frame. For half a second, I thought she might say what the sedan meant. Instead, she got in and locked the doors before starting the engine. I stood on the brick pavement until her SUV turned out of sight. Only then did I open an encrypted incident note on my phone and enter the plate, the make, the direction of travel, and the time. I did not search the registration. A plate number was information. Permission was a boundary. I knew the difference, even when every instinct in me hated leaving a question unanswered. 2 days later, the unanswered question followed me into a greenhouse. The community garden center sat behind Eliana's design firm, all damp earth, clicking irrigation lines, and jasmine. She was kneeling beside terracotta pots with a clipboard when my shoe touched the gravel. "Elias." She rose quickly, the clipboard crossing her body like a shield. I stopped 6 feet away and held up a folded silk scarf. "You left this at the cafe. You crossed town for a scarf?" I had a meeting 4 blocks away. I considered saying 3 so I would sound less committed. A laugh escaped before she could stop it. Then she saw my expression, and the laugh disappeared. "I wrote down the full plate on Saturday." I said, "I did not run it. If the car means nothing, I delete the note. If it means something, you choose what happens next." The greenhouse fan turned on. Her thumb found the scuffed bear and tapped its ear twice. "It belongs to David, my former husband. We have mediation in 6 weeks," she continued. "Friday the 14th, he wants full custody of Lily." Your daughter? She's 5, her chin lifted. And no, that is not something I'm ashamed to tell you. I did not think it was. She studied my face, then opened a court-monitored co-parenting app. David's newest message read, "Any unstable element introduced into Lily's daily environment will be documented for the mediator. You continue to demonstrate poor judgment about who has access to her home and schedule." It had arrived 9 minutes after Eliana joined the cafe Wi-Fi. A second message mentioned the patio. "Who knew where you were?" I asked. "Nora and my sister." Ask Nora exactly what she shared. Do not accuse her. Assumptions destroy clean evidence. The words came out like an interrogation. Eliana's mouth tightened. I let the silence punish me for a second. That tone was unnecessary. "I'm sorry." "You apologize fast." "Only when the evidence is conclusive." Her mouth almost curved. I placed a business card on the bench instead of handing it to her. I handle device compromise, access control, and evidence preservation. If David is tracking you, there may be a digital or physical explanation. I can perform a limited assessment only with written consent and under your attorney's direction. What do you get out of it? A complete answer. That is not enough. She was right. I watched you go pale beside your car, I said. I know what targeted intimidation looks like. I can help determine what is real. Nothing else is implied. And if I say no, you throw away the card. I delete the plate note in 72 hours. She looked at the card, then at me. I need to call my lawyer. That is the correct first step. Do you ever answer like a normal person? Not during business hours. She picked up the card. That afternoon, she sent one message from the monitored app telling David that all future scheduling would remain there. She did not mention me, the plate, or the possibility of surveillance. Then she photographed the message and sent it to Maren. Even before she accepted help, she was already building her own record. That evening, Nora called me first. David phoned Friday about Lily's pickup. She said, he asked whether Eliana was still meeting me at Sunny Patio. I corrected him and said she was meeting you. He already knew the cafe. I only confirmed the date. Save the call log, write the sequence down now. Do not contact him. I made this worse. Then help make it useful. By 9, Nora had sent a signed account to Eliana's attorney, Maren Ortiz. It proved David had known the location before Nora confirmed anything. The next morning, Maren called, Ms. Carter authorizes a preliminary assessment. No device changes until we preserve anything with evidentiary value. That is my standard procedure. I never assume anyone has one. I think we are going to get along. I am not billing for friendship, Mr. Reed. Then we definitely are. Saturday morning, I sat at Eliana's kitchen table with my field laptop closed. Her craftsman house smelled of cinnamon tea. Rolled landscape plans leaned against one wall. A jar of honey sat beside the kettle with its label pressed back crooked. Eliana placed her phone, an older tablet, and the router sheet on the table. The scuffed teddy bear keychain rested between them. Before touching anything, I slid a consent form toward her. The scope is network traffic, installed profiles, identifiers, and security logs. I do not read personal messages, photographs, or client files. You can stop the assessment at any time. Administrative control remains yours. She read every line before signing. You make no changes without telling me, she said. Yes. And if we find something? We preserve before we repair. Her thumb tapped the bear twice. I opened the laptop. I documented serial numbers, software versions, router settings, and the exact device times. Then I placed a passive tap between the router and modem so I could observe traffic without installing anything. Eliana sat across from me with black tea and no honey. Your grandmother? I asked, nodding at the jar. She put honey in everything. Tea, oatmeal, tomato sauce once. Intentional. She claimed it was, we agreed not to preserve that evidence. At 11:17, the tablet contacted a domain that should not have existed. Every 60 seconds, it sent a device identifier, network name, and encrypted location block to infrastructure associated with stalkerware disguised as a family calendar service. Do not touch the tablet, I said. Her mug stopped halfway to her mouth. I turned the traffic graph toward her. This is consistent with unauthorized location reporting. It is an indicator, not yet a courtroom conclusion. Can you stop it? Yes. First, another examiner must be able to reproduce what we found. Lily draws on that tablet. The sentence was quiet. The consequence was not. Is she here? With my sister until tonight. Good. We place it in a shielded sleeve, call Marin, and create a forensic image before changing anything. After that, you decide whether it is cleaned or replaced. Eliana pressed both hands flat on the table. I should have known. The software was designed to disappear. I kept my voice low. Call Marin. I'll preserve the packet capture and prepare the incident sheet. A next step was more useful than an argument with her guilt. She reached for her phone. An hour later, Marin met us at Harbor Digital Forensics, a narrow office above a print shop. The independent examiner, Victor Chen, wore reading glasses on a cord and spoke more warmly to devices than to people. He reviewed my photographs, timestamps, consent form, and packet capture. You left the original state intact, he said, and synchronized your clock against two sources. Yes. Victor glanced at Marin. That saves us an argument later. He explained every step to Eliana before creating the acquisition. 2 SHA 256 hashes went onto a chain of custody sheet. One encrypted copy was sealed for Marin, one remained with Victor, and the original tablet entered a tamper-evident bag. Eliana signed as owner. I signed only as the person who found the traffic. On the working copy, the hidden service appeared beneath a fake calendar support package installed 8 months earlier under an administrator profile created, while David still had access for custody scheduling. Can you connect the server to him? Marin asked. Not yet. Victor said, we report what we can prove. By late afternoon, he'd produced a preliminary malware report. I added a network diagram and preservation memo. Marin placed both in a manila envelope with the case number. The GPS leak was real. The person behind it remained one locked door farther down the hall. Before we left, Victor made Eliana verify the sealed tablet's evidence number. Marin offered 3 ways to purchase a replacement. Eliana chose privately and wrote the decision into her notes. Her shoulders settled when nobody made the choice for her. Victor looked at my packet capture again. You did not chase the dramatic answer, he said. Dramatic answers contaminate easily. He gave one short nod. It was the first time a third party had confirmed, in front of Eliana, that restraint was part of competence rather than the absence of it. After the lab, I followed Eliana home while a locksmith rekeyed the exterior doors. The back strike plate was held by half-inch screws. I stared long enough for her to notice. Is that the security version of swearing? It is the security version of questioning civilization. You carry screws? I carry solutions to disappointingly predictable problems. I replaced them with 3-inch reinforced steel screws that reached the wall stud, checked every latch, and inspected an adhesive mark under the SUV. It was old road residue, not a tracker. You looked relieved to be wrong, she said. I prefer boring answers. That must make dating difficult. Today has not improved the statistics. For the first time since the cafe, she smiled without checking the street. 4 weeks passed in signatures, reports, and small repairs. The infected tablet stayed sealed. Eliana bought a replacement under a new account. I rebuilt the home network in her name, gave her the only master password, and configured alerts to reach her first. Marin sent a preservation request to the hosting provider. Victor traced the remote service toward an account funded by David's consulting company, but refused to call it final until certified records arrived. Twice a week, I stopped by to review logs and deliver exhibits. The first Tuesday, black coffee waited beside the chair facing both the kitchen door and hallway. I moved it, Eliana said, superior exit geometry. That is not a recognized design term. It is now. I'm licensed. The next week, she labeled the spare screw box Elias approved paranoia. I crossed out paranoia and wrote basic structural dignity. She found it while I was working and laughed hard enough that I clicked the wrong tab. I corrected it before she saw. That was the contradiction of those weeks. I wanted her to notice me, and I refused to let the work that made her safe become a reason she should. She learned I paced while files hashed. I learned she used black tea to think and honey after hard calls because the sweetness belonged to her grandmother. When I forgot to eat, she set soup beside my laptop and called it system maintenance. One evening, she unrolled a courtyard plan beside my keyboard and asked which bench I would choose. I pointed to the one with a view of both gates. She moved my finger to a bench beneath a flowering tree. "That one has no tactical advantage," I said. "It has shade. Shade is not an access control feature. It is if the objective is staying long enough to enjoy the place." I looked at the drawn branches, then at her. The safer answer would have been a joke. Instead, I said, "I forget that sometimes." She did not turn the admission into a discussion. She simply drew a second path to the shaded bench so it could be reached without crossing the play area. The plan stayed on her table for the rest of the week. Unfinished at one corner where Lily had apparently added a purple pond no engineer had approved. Nora became useful instead of merely sorry. She gave Marin her call records, handled Lily's Friday pickups, and stopped sharing Eliana's schedule. One evening, she arrived with Lily's backpack and a large plush teddy bear whose blue ribbon had come loose. "Lily says nobody may fix it unless both loops match," Eliana said. Nora looked at me. I know a man with strong views about symmetry. Eliana placed the bear on the top shelf instead of handing it over. "Not yet." At the end of the 4th week, Victor's certified records arrived. The account had been created from David's office network, funded through his company card, and accessed within minutes of Eliana joining the cafe, greenhouse, and home networks. Marin scheduled an evidence conference. Friday the 14th was exactly 2 weeks away. At the conference, Marin made Eliana explain what decision each exhibit supported. Victor described the findings, and I spoke only when asked, when Marin tested the claim that the service had been installed for innocent scheduling. Eliana pointed to the hidden microphone permission and the messages timed to her locations. Her voice shook once, then steadied. "This is not a misunderstanding," she said. "It is a system he used after I withdrew permission." Marin closed the folder. "That is the sentence we build around." Afterward, Eliana bought 3 cinnamon rolls from the bakery below the office. She gave one to Marin, one to Victor, and placed the third beside my black coffee. Relief did not look like celebration. It looked like all 4 of us eating over legal pads while the next deadline waited. That Thursday night, rain blurred the backyard lights while Eliana stirred soup, and I reviewed the forensic image through Victor's logged, read-only session. The GPS component was documented. I was checking installation artifacts when another permission appeared beneath the fake calendar package. Microphone access. I stopped pacing. Eliana. She turned off the burner and came to the table. A hidden cache held compressed audio files. I recorded the directory hash and called Victor before opening one. "Proceed with the newest file," he said over speaker. "Read only." Rain hissed from the laptop, followed by Eliana asking whether I wanted more tea. My answer came after hers. The recording had been made in that kitchen 3 weeks earlier. Then a remote voice note played. David's voice was calm. "Security consultant, 29, no family ties. Bringing an unknown man into the house while claiming Lily needs stability. Keep collecting." Eliana stepped back into the island. The spoon struck the tile. He heard us. The file was trapped in the cache before the tablet was sealed. I said, "Victor has the hash and access log. The original remains preserved." He heard Lily? "We have not found a recording of her." "That is not the same as no." "No." Her arms folded across her stomach. The mom bracelet shook against her sleeve. Victor asked whether she wanted the directory preserved and the session terminated. Eliana looked at the screen instead of away. Preserve everything, then terminated. She called Marin herself. Within minutes, they had a plan. Supplemental affidavit, police report the next morning, emergency communication restrictions, and no direct exchange of Lily until the court reviewed the evidence. When the calls ended, the soup had gone cold. "I let that tablet sit beside her coloring books," Eliana said. "I wanted to cross the kitchen. My hands stayed flat on the table." "You preserved it. You called counsel. You made the next decision yourself." Her breath caught, then she crossed the distance and pressed her forehead to my chest. My hands rose slowly and stopped short of her back. "Eliana?" She nodded. Only then did I rest my palms between her shoulder blades. Rain hammered the window. Cinnamon, wet pavement, and cooling soup filled the room. I did not promise a court result I could not control. I stood still until her grip loosened, then moved one hand away first so she could step back without feeling released. "The soup is probably ruined," she said. "It is below optimal temperature." "That is very romantic." I was not aware this was a romantic event. Her laugh came out uneven, but it came. "We reheated the soup," she added honey to her tea, at midnight. Victor sent the supplemental hash report, and Marin confirmed the emergency filing for morning. The fear had not vanished. It had acquired paperwork. Before I left, Eliana set the scuffed keychain beside the evidence receipt without tapping it. Lily had won it the day she learned to write her name. David once called it cheap and threw it away. Eliana found it and washed it at midnight. "I kept thinking I was holding it for her," Eliana said. "Maybe you were." She slid it back onto the purse zipper. "Maybe I was holding on to the part nobody else gets to decide is worthless." The next morning, Eliana met me on the porch in a structured blazer. I carried the manila envelope containing my incident memorandum, the network diagram, router logs, Victor's reports, provider certification, audio directory hash, Nora's declaration, and an unbroken chain of custody record. I held it out. "You cannot come inside the courthouse on the 14th, she said. "Marin may need technical answers. She can call you, Victor can appear remotely, David will turn you into the story if you stand beside me. I need the record to show every decision is mine." She was right. That did not make the envelope lighter. I could have argued. The words lined up behind my teeth. Instead, I placed the envelope in her hands and stepped down one stair. "All right, Elias." When someone I cared about drew a boundary, an old part of me treated it like a locked door and backed away before I became the pressure on the other side. "I will send the remote support plan by Thursday," I said. "I will not enter unless Marin asks and you agree." "That is not what I meant." "It is what you asked." The sentence came out colder than I intended. A shadow crossed her face, but I did not climb the stair again. She held the envelope to her blazer. "Thank you for understanding." I drove away. When I looked back from inside the car, she was still on the porch. For the next 13 days, the case moved. Marin filed the forensic affidavit and requested temporary communication limits. A detective accepted the cyberstalking report and preserved David's office devices. Victor prepared to appear remotely. After reviewing my exhibit index, he called, "Most people make evidence impressive. You made it usable." From Victor, that was a standing ovation. Nora handled Lily's pickups and documented each exchange. Eliana and I spoke only about the case, or that was the label on the calls. On Monday, she asked whether a router alert meant an intruder. It was the refrigerator checking for an update. "Your refrigerator's not hostile," I said. "It has seen me eat cake over the sink." "Then it has leverage." On Wednesday, she texted a photograph of the screw box. My correction now read basic structural dignity. Probably. I saved it without telling her. Thursday evening, Marin called. "Stay outside the annex, be available by phone. Eliana knows you will be nearby." She asked me not to come inside. "She did not ask you to vanish." Friday the 14th arrived cold and bright. At 9:40, I parked across from the family court annex and stood beside a concrete planter on the public sidewalk, far enough away not to become part of Eliana's legal team, close enough to see the entrance. At 9:45, Eliana climbed the steps with Marin. The manila envelope rested in her tote. Nora followed with Lily's backpack because she would handle preschool pickup if mediation ran long. Eliana did not look across the street. I kept my promise and did not make her. David arrived with his attorney, saw me, slowed, then went inside. At 10:32, Marin called. Victor explained the hashes, provider certification, and why the audio cache predated the seal. I answered one question about the router capture and one about clock synchronization. At 11:20, David's counsel requested a private caucus. The courthouse windows reflected traffic so clearly that every gray sedan made my attention sharpen before the license plate proved it ordinary. I checked my phone once, then forced it back into my pocket. Waiting was its own discipline. Inside, Eliana had to be the person making decisions. Outside, my only useful action was not stealing that role from her. At noon, Nora came out and stopped several feet from me. They are drafting terms. David withdraws the full custody request, interim supervised visitation, all communication through the monitored app, no location tracking, device access, or unannounced contact. The investigation continues. Has Eliana agreed? Not yet. She refused language that made the surveillance sound accidental. That mattered more than every other sentence. At 1:15, David emerged with his attorney. His face was controlled, but the control had hardened around his mouth. He looked across the street. For weeks, he had turned observation into power. Now, timestamps, hashes, signed handoffs, and certified records had made observation answerable. I did not smile. He looked away first. Marin came out carrying the signed agreement. The judge approved it as a temporary order. The full custody petition is withdrawn. Supervised visitation begins next week, and communication restrictions start today. The criminal review remains open. Understood. Victor said your index prevented 3 hours of argument. He is becoming sentimental. Marin's mouth almost moved. Wait here. Eliana stood at the top of the steps. For the first time since I had known her, she was not checking the parked cars. She handed Nora the tote, waited for the light, and crossed the street alone. She stopped close enough for me to see the faded yellow star in her mom bracelet. The judge signed it. She said, David cannot contact me outside the app or come to the house. Lily's visits are supervised while the investigation continues. You chose the terms? I rejected the first draft. I heard. You did exactly what I asked. I stayed out. You stayed out of the building. She held my gaze. You did not disappear from my life unless I made that choice. I had no prepared answer. Her hand rose toward my lapel, then stopped. May I? Yes. Her fingers closed lightly on the fabric. Our first date was perfect, she whispered. Before you kiss me, you should know I'm a mom. It was not a confession or a warning. It was a door she was choosing to open. I know. She comes first. She should. I decide when you meet her. Yes. And helping me did not purchase anything. No. Good. I tilted my head, asking without pressure. She nodded. My hand rose to her face. I brushed my thumb once along her jaw and leaned slowly enough for her to change her mind. She did not. I kissed her forehead. Her hand settled over my wrist, and she leaned her forehead against mine. That was not where I expected you to kiss me, she murmured. I am conducting a phased implementation. Her laugh warmed the cold air. 2 weeks later, the sunny patio cafe looked almost exactly as it had on our first date. The same brick pavement held the afternoon sun. Espresso drifted through the open doors. Eliana's silver SUV reflected only trees and passing clouds. Eliana sat across from me in a gray sweater with black tea and the crooked honey jar she had brought from home, because Lily claimed cafe honey tasted too organized. Lily occupied the chair between us with chocolate on one thumb and the solemn authority of someone who considered adults unfinished projects. The large plush teddy bear sat in her lap. Its blue ribbon was undone. The scuffed keychain lay beside Eliana's purse. She had not touched it once. Lily held up the ribbon. Mom says you fix things carefully. I try. She says you make doors boring. That is one of my better skills. Lily pushed the bear toward me. The loops have to match. Nora makes one look tired. I heard that. Nora called from the next table, where she was pretending not to supervise the introduction. I tied the ribbon. Lily inspected it from 2 angles. Too tight. I loosened it. Now the right one is proud. I lowered the right loop. She nodded. Okay, you can stay for the croissant. Generous terms. They are temporary, Eliana said. Pending review. Then she reached across the table and placed her hand over mine in full view of Lily, Nora, the waiter, and anyone passing. It was not gratitude and not a reward. It was a public choice made after fear had stopped making choices for her. The practical pieces were not magically finished. The detective still had David's devices. The final custody order required another hearing. Supervised visits had begun without incident, and every exchange produced a clean record inside the monitored app. Eliana controlled her accounts, her network, her schedule, and the timing of every introduction. Lily offered a corner of croissant to the bear. "Bears do not accept digital evidence," I told her. "They accept chocolate." That creates a maintenance issue. It is his choice. Eliana's fingers tightened around mine. Nora lifted her coffee in a quiet apology. Eliana answered with a nod. Their friendship had not returned to its old shape, but the repair held. Beside her wrist, the scuffed little bear keychain rested flat and silent, and I understood that safety was never the lock I could build around her life. It was the room she regained to choose who entered it. The end. Closing thoughts. Core lesson. Healthy love does not ask someone to trade independence for protection. It creates enough safety, honesty, and practical support for clear choices without fear. Green flag. Elias never treated his expertise as a claim on Eliana's affection. He asked permission, preserved her control, respected her courthouse boundary, and stayed dependable without making himself the center of her recovery. The opposite of toxic passion disguised as protection. Question. Would you have trusted Elias after that first date, or would you have needed more time before letting him help? Please like and subscribe so we can share more stories like this.